I grew up a foster child. Most houses I lived in were alright, though each one had its quirk. I had a strange childhood. I often saw things that others did not. This made it particularly hard to speak about the things going on in my life, with a new family every few months. I don't remember much of my childhood, bits here and there about each family I was placed with. There was also the irritation and hate for the system that I felt being a ward of the state. The one thing I do remember very well was the things that I saw, things that seemed impossible to make sense of. They were things that seemed to defy my minuscule understanding of logic and gravity at the time. I didn't know there was anything special about them at the time until I shared stories with other people. It seemed that nobody was able to see the things that I saw. This was one of those days, one I remember clearly. I was in a church and I was young enough to know that I would still have been with my family before I was in the system. It was no church that I or my family attended. We never went to one, aside from this once. I don't know why we were there, or even who I was with, but I remember being alone in one of the first few aisles, sitting in one of the dark red pews. There was something happening. I remember feeling strange, like maybe I was doing something I should not have, or that I was somewhere I was not meant to be. The church was practically empty, and the few people that were left were just clearing out of the sanctuary. There were no lights or theatrics running, but a few people ran around doing the monotonous task of closing the church after service. I can still remember the feeling of the fabric under my hand, the cheap fabric feel of the coarsely stitched cushion. The wood backrest was dark brown with a hint of red in it. When I looked up, the ceiling was open like a warehouse. I can see the structure of the church, steel graters running across the ceiling. Even now, it feels like I can remember everything, even the carpet under the seat, a dark maroon, hard to the touch. It was only a thin covering over a hard cement floor. The sanctuary was large. I looked around, peeking my head above the pew in front of me. Everyone had left, though I still heard a vacuum, so somebody was still around. It sounded like the noises coming from the hall, where the doors on the left side of the sanctuary led. I walked down the rows, thinking back. I couldn't have been more than 5 years old, because the height of the pew in front of me was even with my line of sight. When I got to the end, I ran across the aisle that separated the 2 rows of pews and started down the same row on the other side. Just then, I saw something. It was so weird. It had a green face, and its eyes were large and shaped like triangles with soft edges. It had something it was pushing in front of it, though I didn't catch if it had scales or anything else. I wasn't interested in looking beyond the glance I had already gotten. I ducked between the pews, getting on my hands and knees. I could still hear the vacuum, and in fact, it had gotten closer. I crawled under the pew seat, hoping not to be found, but for some reason, I felt something. It was an assurance that it knew I was here, as sure as I knew it was here. The vacuum sound kept getting closer and closer, and I closed my eyes tight. I hoped the vacuum sound wasn't coming from it, that it was somebody that could help me. I hid until the sound started getting further away. I peeked my head over the pew, and the sound was coming from the thing, the monster. It was pushing a device that looked vaguely like a vacuum machine, but only in shape. At the bottom of it were snakes, slithering their tongues out, smelling the air. Their bodies ran up the pole of the machine, wrapping around it like a constrictor. Their body and heads were only about an inch thick. I was stuck in place as I watched the thing push the device away from me. All the while, the vacuum sound emitting from it. It was going in front of the chairs, and as it turned and started heading down the first row of chairs, I ducked again and hid under the pew. I knew if it kept on its route, it would go down every row of chairs, and I was in the 3rd row. The noise got louder and louder, then quieter again. I covered my head and my ears in terror, trying not to make a noise. I wanted to get up. I wanted to leave, to run, but I was paralyzed with fear. I waited again, as it got louder, quieter, the end of the 1st row. Louder, then it started to get quiet again. I peeked out over the pew. Its strange green head was passing me, still pushing the device forward. I started to think, maybe it didn't know I was here. Maybe I could get away. but it was too late. The sound started to grow again as I hid under the seats. I was ducking, hiding, pleading in my head, please, please don't find me. The device got louder and louder as it approached. It was coming straight toward me, and I could see the heads of the snake slither and squirm all over the ground as the device pushed near. Their mouths were open, tongue tasting the air as they hissed. There was a sharp pain in my side, but I didn't make a sound. The last thing I remember was the snakes passing me, and the being, the strange creature and its snake-like reptilian tentacles that pushed it along the ground, pulsating and stretching as it passed. Today, I have a mark on my side, right where that thing bit me. It's the color of a freckle, but it is the strange shape of two discs inside a crescent moon. The lines that form aren't crisp, but it's definitely strange. I've been told it looks like a really odd birthmark. Has anyone else seen this thing? Does anyone else know what it might be? I do wonder if this thing and the bite is the reason I see the things that I do. Thanks for joining us around the campfire. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe below. Also, hit that notification bell to be notified of our new stories as they are posted. If you have a story you'd like to share for narration, submit it via email, and you may be hearing your story next. Our email address is in the description box below. Thank you, and good night.